The first thing you should notice is that it's asking for an inverse function. Then it's asking for domain, range, and all this other stuff. But if you watched question 3, or you did question 3, you should notice this whole structure is the same. All the questions are the same. And if you remember, the last picture we drew looked like this, actually. So one way to get the inverse function, if you happen to have just done this other problem, is to just draw yourself a line like this, and then you're going to reflect. Okay, so this is if you've already done the problem. Then I'm going to pretend like I didn't. Okay, so there'd be a 2 over here, and there'd be a -4 down here, and this you'd intersect wherever you met before. Okay, and that would be your answer. But let's say you haven't already done the problem. So let's say you just start from fresh. How do you find an inverse function? Well, you're gonna have to do this step anyhow because it says solve for the function. You swap x and y, and then you solve for y. Or you could simply solve for x. But I find it's easier to do this. So you would say x equals square root of 4 plus y, and then solve for y. So square both sides, and then solve for y. I don't care which side it's on. Okay, so f inverse of x equals x squared minus 4, but this is a tricky problem. And this picture shows what's happening. It's part of a parabola, but it's not all of a parabola. Because you have to consider the domain and range of your original function, because it doesn't say now plot x squared minus 4, it's going to say plot the inverse function. So because it specifically is coming from another function, it's the inverse of another function, we can't then bring in points that weren't in the original function. Okay, so this is special. So over here, the domain is x has to be, we remember, 4 plus x has to be greater than or equal to 0, so x has to be greater than or equal to minus 4. Okay? And the range is equal to y, or f is greater than or equal to 0. So we had to have the original domain and range, and we're going to flip the domain and range over here. The domain is now x is greater than or equal to 0, y is greater than or equal to -4. Okay, all right, so I guess I should give you another set of instructions up here. Swap domain and range from f to give you f inverse domain and range. Okay? All right, so the important thing is we have to say x greater than or equal to 0. This is going to impose the requested range. So this is redundant information. Redundant. You have to be careful not to omit information unless it actually is redundant. Okay, so now we can go on. The domain of this function is x greater than or equal to 0. The range y greater than or equal to -4. Graph the function. Now we can go ahead and graph the function. And we know, okay, f inverse of 0 is -4. F inverse, just take some points. Let's see, the vertex is at 0, if this is a parabola. Let's take some other points. If x is 2, that's going to give you a root. All right, f of 3, it's 9 minus 4 is 5, so it gives you an idea of how to plot this. So you start at -4, 0, 2, 0, and then this is going to be 3, 5. okay? Half of a parabola. Okay, so some people prefer to plot the whole parabola and then cross this part out. And that's probably what I would do, honestly. And what else do I want to say? Oh yeah, like how many people would just forget the domain and range and just give me the whole parabola? A lot. And would that get partial credit? Yeah, they'd get at least half the credit for the problem, maybe 3/4 of the credit, something like that. So all is not lost. So because here's what I'm thinking. I am testing this process. I'm testing if you're able to swap the x and y and solve for y. That's important. And so I would think that's worth at least half of the problem or more. Right? And then the rest of it is all the details.